Hey, welcome to the lesson about angle pairs. Last lesson we talked about a couple angle pairs. Now we're going to explore more about them and different types of angle pairs. We already know about adjacent angles, and we already know about vertical angles. However, what are complementary angles? What are supplementary angles? What is a linear pair? What are parallel lines, and what are perpendicular lines? By the end of the lesson, you should be able to answer all those, identify different types of angle pairs, angles, and lines. First, I want to talk about complementary angles. Complementary angles are just another example of an angle pair. Complementary angles can also be adjacent, but they don't have to. In most cases, you'll find them right next to each other. For example, in the two images you see on the left here, these are adjacent, they share a ray. However, over here, these two angles are still complementary. However, they are separated from each other. Now, what makes an angle pair complementary? Complementary angles are any two angles whose measures add to 90 degrees. So in this example, 25 and 65 is 90 degrees. 50 and 40 is 90 degrees. So any two angles, if I put them together, form a right angle or 90-degree angle. Supplementary angles are very similar. Supplementary angles are another example of an angle pair. They can be adjacent, but they don't have to. For example, you see two adjacent angles right here. Here, they're separated. Supplementary angles are similar to complementary angles, except they are two angles whose measures add to 180 degrees and not 90 degrees. So supplementary angles are two angles whose measures add to 180 degrees. For example, 120 and 60, they are 180 degrees. And 110 and 70, it's 180 degrees. So essentially, whenever I put two angles together, and it forms a straight line. And that brings us to a linear pair. A linear pair is an angle pair, but it's a specific angle pair. It's a pair of angles that form a straight line. So, essentially, it's another word for supplementary angles. Two angles that are a linear pair are also supplementary. The only difference between supplementary angles and linear pair is that a linear pair has to be adjacent. They have to be adjacent angles because they make up a straight line. So angle 1 plus angle 2 makes up this straight angle, 180 degrees, in a straight line. Alright, so we've talked about lines that intersect. But what about lines that never intersect? Well, those are parallel lines. They never form any angles, and they have no points in common. So none of the points on this line will ever be the same as the points on this line. So now we know about lines that do intersect and lines that don't intersect. But what if I had two lines that intersected and made four congruent right angles? Well, those two lines are perpendicular lines. It's a very special case when two lines intersect and each angle that is formed when they intersect is 90 degrees. Now, if one angle is 90 degrees, then all of them have to be 90 degrees. Now, pause the video, take some time, copy these vocab words down. If you have any problems with some, put a little question mark next to it, bring it up in live class, or come to Math Cafe if you're stuck on something, and we'll try to explain it more in depth. That's all for the lesson. Hope you can answer these essential questions. If you can't, make sure you go back through the video, watch some things over. Maybe there's something you missed. If you're still just really having trouble and you've watched a couple times with a certain vocabulary word or something that I said, come to Math Cafe, ask us, we're there, or just ask us in live class. We'd be more than happy to explain this more in depth. And next pod, we'll get introduced to some terms and ideas about mathematical proofs.